The voicemail notification blinked at me from across my desk, a tiny red light that would change everything. I'd been ignoring my mother's calls all morning, too caught up in quarterly reports to deal with what I assumed would be another family drama. If I'd known what that message contained, maybe I would have picked up sooner. My name is Alara, and until that Tuesday afternoon, I'd managed to build a pretty decent wall between my life in Chicago and the chaos back home in Michigan. Alara, honey. My mother's voice cracked through the speaker. I can't take it anymore. Cassidy's out of control. The credit cards, the parties, the lies. I found something in her room, and I just can't. The message cut off with a sob. I played it 3 more times, my stomach tightening with each replay. The last time I'd heard my mother sound this broken was when we lost my grandmother 5 years ago. My fingers hovered over the callback button, but instead, I opened my bottom desk drawer and pulled out the photo I kept hidden under old expense reports. It showed 2 little girls in matching Christmas dresses, arms wrapped around each other, gap-toothed smiles beaming at the camera. Cassidy and me, before everything went sideways. Before she learned how to twist every situation to her advantage. Before our parents started emptying their retirement accounts to bail her out of one crisis after another. My phone buzzed again, Ethan probably wondering why I wasn't at our lunch date. I texted him quickly. Family emergency. Rain check. His response was immediate. Cassidy again? I didn't answer. Instead, I found myself opening my browser, checking flight prices to Detroit. A notification popped up from my calendar. 3 critical meetings tomorrow, 2 presentations next week. My carefully structured life, the one I'd built 300 miles away from my sister's influence, stared back at me in neat color-coded blocks. Everything okay? My assistant Monica appeared in my doorway, concern etched on her face. You look like you've seen a ghost. I need to clear my schedule for the next few days. I heard myself say, even as part of my brain screamed at me to stay put, to let someone else handle the Cassidy situation for once. But the Johnson presentation? I'll handle it remotely. I was already packing my laptop, moving on autopilot. Something's wrong with my mom. As I rushed toward the elevator, another message came through. This time from my father, which was rare enough to make my heart skip. Just 2 words. Come home. The doors closed, and I caught my reflection in the polished metal. I looked exactly like my mother did in old photos, right down to the worried crease between my eyebrows. The same crease she'd developed dealing with Cassidy's first big crisis at 16. I'd sworn I wouldn't let my sister's drama affect my life anymore. But here I was, running home again. Only this time felt different. This time, I wasn't going home to help. I was going home to end it. The bass from Cassidy's party rattled the windows of our childhood home as I pulled into the driveway. 3 unfamiliar cars were parked haphazardly on the lawn, and empty wine bottles lined the porch railing like tiny soldiers standing guard. My mother's carefully tended rosebushes had been trampled, their broken stems a perfect metaphor for what I was about to walk into. I found my parents in the kitchen, Dad slumped at the table while Mom methodically loaded the dishwasher. They looked smaller somehow, worn down like old furniture that had seen too much use. Oh, honey, Mom straightened up, forcing a smile. We didn't expect you until tomorrow. Caught an earlier flight. I set my bag down, noting the stack of unopened bills on the counter. Where's Cassidy? A burst of laughter from the backyard answered my question. Through the window, I could see my sister holding court by the pool, surrounded by people I'd never seen before. Her husband Ryan lounged nearby, scrolling through his phone with practiced indifference. She said it was just going to be a small get-together, Dad muttered, not meeting my eyes. To celebrate their anniversary. Their anniversary was 3 months ago. I opened the fridge, finding it stocked with expensive craft beers and virtually no food. What's really going on here? Before either could answer, Cassidy burst through the back door, her designer sundress splattered with what looked like red wine. Alara, my favorite big sister. She threw her arms around me, smelling of alcohol and that signature perfume she'd worn since high school. You're just in time for the fun part. Cassidy, we need to talk about. Later. She waved dismissively, grabbing a fresh bottle of wine. Mom, where are those fancy glasses you got for Christmas? The crystal ones. I watched Mom's face fall. Sweetheart, those were your grandmother's. Perfect. Ryan's boss is here, and I want to make a good impression. Cassidy was already rummaging through cabinets. Did you move them again? They're not for parties, I said firmly. And maybe you should wrap this up. Mom and Dad look exhausted. Cassidy's smile flickered for just a second, something darker flashing in her eyes. Always the responsible one, aren't you? Still trying to control everything. She turned to our parents. You don't mind the party, right? You love having the house full of people. Dad started to speak, but Mom cut him off. Of course we don't mind, sweetie. Just, maybe keep the music down. I watched my sister bounce back outside, victory written all over her face. The moment the door closed, Mom's shoulders sagged. How much has she taken this time? I asked quietly. Elara, please, Dad warned. Not now. But I'd already spotted the bank statement peeking out from under the bills. Before anyone could stop me, I pulled it free. The negative balance made my stomach lurch. Jesus Christ, I whispered. How long has this been going on? Through the window, I could see Cassidy raising a toast with what I assumed were grandmother's crystal glasses. She caught my eye and raised one higher, a challenge in her smile. That's when I noticed Mom's wedding ring was missing. After the party finally died down, I waited until dawn to search Cassidy's old bedroom. The missing wedding ring kept me awake all night, tossing in my childhood bed while scenarios played through my mind like a horror movie marathon. The room still looked like a teenager's shrine. Photos of Cassidy's high school glory days plastered everywhere. Cheerleading trophies collecting dust. But something was off. The closet door was slightly ajar, and when I pulled it open, I found stacks of papers scattered across the floor. Credit card statements, loan applications, pawn shop receipts, and there, buried under a pile of overdue notices, was a letter from a debt collector addressed to my parents. The amount made me sit down hard on Cassidy's old bed. Looking for something? I jumped. Mom stood in the doorway, still in her robe, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Your wedding ring, I said, holding up the debt collector's letter. Did she take that too? Mom's hand went to her empty finger, a habit she hadn't broken yet. I gave it to her. She said she just needed it for a few days. To help Ryan with a business opportunity. Jesus, Mom. I stood up, papers crinkling under my feet. When are you going to stop enabling her? You don't understand. Mom's voice cracked. If we don't help her, she'll leave. Take Ryan and go somewhere we can't reach her. I can't lose my daughter. You're losing everything else instead. I gestured at the financial massacre around us. Where's Dad in all this? Working doubles at the factory. He thinks if we can just get through this rough patch. A sound from the hallway made us both turn. Cassidy stood there, wearing designer pajamas that probably cost more than our parents' monthly mortgage payment. Going through my things? Her voice was honey-sweet, but her eyes were cold. That's not very sisterly of you, Elara. Neither is stealing Mom's wedding ring. I borrowed it. Cassidy stepped into the room, surveying the papers I'd scattered. And I see you're still playing detective. Always trying to prove I'm the bad guy. The evidence speaks for itself. Evidence. She laughed, but it didn't reach her eyes. You mean proof that our parents love me enough to help when I need it? Unlike some people who abandon their family for a fancy job in Chicago. That's not fair, Mom started, but Cassidy cut her off. Life isn't fair, Mom. But at least I stayed. At least I visit more than twice a year. At least you what? I stepped closer, feeling something snap inside me. At least you bankrupted them? At least you pawned Mom's ring? What's next, Cassidy? The house. For a split second, something flickered across my sister's face. Guilt, maybe, or fear. But then her mask slipped back into place. You should go back to Chicago, she said softly. You clearly don't belong here anymore. As she turned to leave, a piece of paper fluttered from her pocket. A loan application, already filled out in Dad's handwriting. For their house. Dated tomorrow. Back in Chicago, my apartment felt like a stranger's home. I'd been staring at the same spreadsheet for hours, the numbers blurring together while my mind kept drifting back to that loan application in Cassidy's pocket. My phone buzzed, another missed call from Mom. The 7th today. I couldn't bring myself to answer, knowing I'd cave if I heard her voice. You look terrible, Ethan said from my office doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. He set one on my desk, frowning at the untouched sandwich from lunch. When's the last time you actually slept? I'm fine. The lie felt heavy on my tongue. Just busy with the Johnson account. Right. And those property records you're searching are for work. He gestured at my second monitor, where I'd been digging through our parents' financial history. Elara, you need to. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Ryan, Cassidy's husband. That was new. Hello, Elara. His voice was hushed, nervous. Look, I know we're not close, but something's wrong. Cassidy's been making these calls, talking about moving to California. She says your parents are going to help us start over. My coffee cup froze halfway to my mouth. What? She's got all these papers spread out, talking about selling the house. Your parents' house. I tried asking questions, but He paused. I think she's planning something big. And I don't think your parents know. The line went dead. When I tried calling back, it went straight to voicemail. What happened? Ethan asked, watching my face. Before I could answer, an email notification popped up. From my bank. A transfer confirmation for $50,000 to my parents' account. No, I whispered, pulling up my banking app. No. There it was. A transfer I never made, authorized with my credentials. My emergency fund gone. Someone hacked my account. But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't true. Only one other person knew my password. The same person who'd helped me set up my first online banking account years ago. The same person who'd insisted on using our mother's maiden name as the security question. My phone buzzed one final time. A text from Cassidy. Thanks for the loan, sis. Don't worry, Mom and Dad won't have to know where the money came from. Ethan read the message over my shoulder. Call the bank. Report it as fraud. I can't. My voice sounded distant, even to myself. She'll tell them I authorized it. It's her word against mine, and she has my password. They'll think I'm trying to commit fraud. Then call the police. And send my sister to jail? Destroy what's left of my parents' lives. I looked up at him, seeing the worry in his eyes. There has to be another way. There is, he said quietly. You can let her win. Again. Or you can finally stop protecting everyone else and fight back. My screen lit up with another email. A receipt for 2 one-way tickets to Los Angeles, purchased with my emergency fund. Departure date, 3 days from now. The choice Ethan laid out suddenly seemed crystal clear. It was time to stop playing defense. The bank manager's office felt too small, too warm. I'd been sitting here for an hour, explaining how my sister had accessed my account, while he looked at me with practiced sympathy that didn't reach his eyes. Unfortunately, Miss Mitchell, since she had your authorization, she stole my password, which you shared with her. He closed my file with a quiet finality. Legally, this is a civil matter. My phone buzzed, a text from Dad. Coming home for dinner tonight? Your mother's making your favorite. I stared at the message, my throat tight. They didn't know yet. About the money, about Cassidy's plans to leave, about any of it. The elevator ride to my office felt endless. When the doors opened, Monica was waiting with a stack of papers and a worried expression. Your sister called. 3 times. She said it's about your parents' mortgage. Before I could respond, my computer pinged with a new email. From our family's bank, addressed to Dad but copied to my work email. Probably Cassidy's doing. The subject line, second mortgage approval. My hands shook as I opened it. The amount made my stolen $50,000 look like pocket change. Cancel my meetings, I told Monica. All of them. But the Johnson presentation. Cancel it. The drive home took forever and no time at all. When I pulled up, Cassidy's car was in the driveway, along with an expensive-looking moving truck. I found them all in the living room. Mom was crying, Dad looked shell-shocked, and Cassidy was beaming. Perfect timing, she chirped. I was just telling them about our amazing plan. Our plan. How you're helping us move to LA. The $50,000 you're contributing to our fresh start. She turned to our parents. See, even Alara agrees we need this change. And with the money from the second mortgage, we can. There is no we. My voice came out steadier than I felt. And you're not getting that mortgage. Cassidy's smile flickered. Don't be silly. The papers are already signed. No, they're not. I pulled out my phone, showing them the email I'd sent to the bank during my drive. I reported potential fraud. They've frozen everything pending investigation. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Cassidy laughed, but it sounded wrong, sharp-edged. You wouldn't dare. She looked at our parents. Tell her she can't do this. Tell her. They can't stop me. I stepped closer, seeing real fear in my sister's eyes for the first time. Just like they can't stop me from pressing charges about my stolen money. Or reporting the credit card fraud. Or, you'd send your own sister to jail? Mom whispered. No, I said, watching Cassidy's face. I'm giving her a choice. Stay, face what she's done, get help. Or leave. But if she leaves with nothing. No more money. No more bailouts. No more destroying this family to feed her endless needs. Cassidy's mask cracked completely. You self-righteous bitch. You think you can just... The police are already reviewing the evidence. I lied, watching her face pale. Your choice, Cassidy. But make it fast. Behind her, through the window, I could see Ryan loading boxes into the moving truck, rushing like he knew time was running out. Cassidy threw the first punch. Not literally, she was always smarter than that. Instead, she called the police herself. I watched from our parents' front porch as two officers approached, their faces professionally neutral. Behind them, Ryan was still loading boxes, pretending not to notice the unfolding drama. "She's trying to extort me," Cassidy sobbed, perfectly composed tears streaming down her face. "My own sister is threatening to falsely accuse me of fraud unless I give her control of our parents' house." The older officer turned to me. "Is this true, ma'am?" Before I could answer, Mom stepped forward. "There must be some mistake. My daughters would never." "Show them your phone," Cassidy interrupted. "Show them the texts where you threatened to have me arrested unless I signed over my inheritance." That's when I realized what she'd done. While I'd been focused on stopping her latest scheme, she'd been carefully laying groundwork, creating a paper trail that made me look like the villain. "Officer," I started, but Cassidy wasn't finished. "She's always been jealous," she continued, her voice breaking perfectly. "When she found out Mom and Dad were helping me start over, she just snapped. Started making these wild accusations about stolen money and fraud." Dad finally spoke up. "Cassidy, stop this. You know that's not." "I have proof," she cut him off, pulling out her phone. "Screenshots of everything. The threats, the demands, even the email she sent to the bank trying to freeze our assets." The younger officer stepped closer to me. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come down to the station. You can't be serious." But they were. Dead serious. As they led me to their car, I caught a glimpse of Cassidy through the window. She was hugging Mom, playing the victim perfectly, but her eyes met mine with a flash of triumph. "Wait," Ryan called out suddenly. Everyone turned. He stood by the moving truck, holding a small leather-bound book. "I found this while packing. You should probably read it." He tossed it to the older officer, who caught it reflexively. Cassidy's face went white. "That's private property," she snapped, but the officer was already flipping it open. "It's a ledger," he said slowly, "with quite detailed records." I couldn't see what he was reading, but I could see Cassidy's mask crumbling as he turned each page. Whatever Ryan had found, it was enough to make her take a step back, then another. "I want my lawyer," she whispered. The older officer looked up from the ledger. "Ma'am, I think we all need to take a trip downtown." As they led both of us to separate cars, I caught Ryan's eye. He gave me a slight nod before turning away, continuing to load boxes like nothing had happened. Mom's sob cut through the evening air. "How did we get here?" I wished I had an answer for her. But sitting in the back of that police car, watching my sister being cuffed in another, all I could think was, this isn't victory. This is just another kind of loss. The cruiser's door slammed shut, and with it, any hope of salvaging what was left of our family. The interrogation room felt smaller with each passing hour. Across the table, Cassidy sat perfectly poised, her lawyer whispering in her ear. My sister's mask had slipped back into place, but her hands kept fidgeting with Mom's wedding ring. Still on her finger, still a trophy. Detective Sanders placed the leather ledger between us. "Let's go through this again." "It's all there," Ryan spoke up from the corner, where he'd been quietly observing. "Every transaction, every scheme. She made me keep the books." Cassidy's lawyer straightened. "My client was not aware." "That's a lie." Cassidy's voice cracked. "Ryan knew everything. He helped me plan it all." But Ryan just pulled out his phone, pressed play. Cassidy's voice filled the room. "If you ever tell anyone about this, I'll make sure you go down with me. Remember who has all the proof." The detective nodded to an officer, who led Ryan out. Immunity deal they'd explained earlier. His testimony for a clean slate. "You recorded me?" Cassidy whispered, her composure finally shattering. "You betrayed me? Like you betrayed our parents?" I couldn't help asking. "Like you betrayed me?" "I never betrayed anyone." She slammed her hands on the table. "I was trying to save us. To give us the life we deserved. By stealing? By destroying our family. By doing what had to be done." She leaned forward, desperate now. "You left, Elara. You got out. But I stayed. I watched them struggle, watched them choose your success over my dreams, again and again. That's not what happened. You got the college fund. The internships. The perfect life." Her words came faster, years of resentment spilling out. "I got community college and retail jobs and... Why can't you be more like your sister?" The detective cleared his throat. "Miss Mitchell, about the ledger. You want to know about the ledger?" Cassidy laughed, a hollow sound. "Fine. Yes, I took their money. Yes, I forged documents. Yes, I was going to sell their house. Because for once, I wanted to be the one who got away. The one who succeeded. She turned to me, tears streaming now. You were always their golden child. Their perfect daughter. Do you know what that does to someone? Living in your shadow. I stared at my sister, really looked at her, and saw past the designer clothes and practiced poise. Saw the scared little girl who'd once followed me everywhere, begging to be included. We can fix this, I heard myself say. Together. But you have to stop running. For a moment, something flickered in her eyes. Hope, maybe. Or fear. Then she straightened, wiped her tears, and said the words that would change everything. I want to make a deal. The detective leaned forward. What kind of deal? I have proof, Cassidy said quietly. About Dad's company. About what really happened to all that pension money last year. My heart stopped. Cassidy, don't. I'm sorry, Alara. She wasn't looking at me anymore. But I'm not going down alone. The detective was already reaching for his phone, but all I could see was Dad's face when they'd come for him. All I could hear was Mom's broken sob. Some victories feel exactly like defeat. 6 months later, I sat across from Cassidy in the prison visiting room, studying the sister I thought I knew. Her designer clothes were replaced by a standard jumpsuit, her perfect makeup stripped away. She looked younger somehow, more like the girl from our childhood photos. Dad's sentence was reduced, I said, breaking the silence. 3 years instead of 10. The judge considered his cooperation. Cassidy nodded, picking at a loose thread on her sleeve. And Mom? She's selling the house. Moving in with Aunt Sarah while Dad's away. I paused. She's wearing her ring again. Ryan found it in your jewelry box. Something flickered across Cassidy's face. Regret, maybe, or just exhaustion. Ryan got his fresh start after all. Just not with me. The guard called out a 5-minute warning. Around us, other families were hugging goodbye, making promises, sharing tears. We sat in our strained silence. I found something while packing up your room, I said finally, sliding an old photo across the table. 2 little girls in matching Christmas dresses, gap-toothed smiles beaming at the camera. You kept it all these years. Cassidy's fingers trembled as she touched the photo. That was before. Before what? Before I realized I could never be you. She looked up, eyes clear for perhaps the first time in years. I didn't start out wanting to hurt anyone, you know. I just wanted to prove I could succeed too. But each lie needed another lie to cover it. And then it was too late to stop. She nodded, then pushed the photo back to me. Keep it. I don't deserve memories like that anymore. I stood to leave, but something made me hesitate. The therapist you're seeing in here, Mom mentioned you're actually talking to her. Yeah. Cassidy's laugh was soft, bitter. Turns out when you hit rock bottom, there's nowhere left to hide from yourself. Good. I gathered my things, then added. I'll come back next month. Her head snapped up. Why? Because you're still my sister. I met her gaze steadily. And maybe we both need to stop running from who we are. As I turned to leave, she called out. Alara? I found Dad's old ledger. The one that proved he was innocent of the pension fraud. I left it where Mom will find it. I looked back. Why tell me this now? Because you were right. About fixing things together. She smiled faintly. Even if together means something different now. Walking out of the prison, I pulled out my phone to call Mom. Through the window, I caught my reflection. The same worried crease between my brows, but something else too. Something lighter. Some victories don't look like victories at all. Sometimes they look like a sister in prison, finally facing her demons. Like parents rebuilding from ashes. Like an old Christmas photo, creased and worn, but still holding the promise of who we used to be. Who we might be again. I dialed Mom's number, watching the sun set over the prison walls. We had a long way to go, but at least now we were all walking in the same direction. Even if we had to take different paths to get there.